All of you know me by this car, the Toyota Supra that I wide-bodied and put a 1JZ in. If you don't know me for this car, well, I have no idea actually how you found this channel. This car was awesome, but I ended up having to sell it in order to fund the new projects, but BAM! I got another one. It's absolutely awesome, but I also got another one of my dream cars. BAM! I'd been wanting a 3000 GT since high school, and finally it has come to be mine. This car is absolutely incredible. There's so many great things about it. For starters, comes with a twin turbo V6. So this engine produced 300 horsepower from a factory. I'm not sure if that's at the crank or at the wheels, but I do know in the later models which had 320 horsepower with 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. So you can imagine this is 0 to 60 somewhere around the 5 to 6 second mark, which is pretty respectable, especially when you're considering that the car is from 1993. When I moved the car in, it drove itself in just fine, but it does have a good amount of issues. For starters, there's some light surface rust, which isn't a huge deal, but what needs to be addressed is the entire engine. So what it needs is a refresh. So some things like the gasket needs to be replaced, the spark plug wires need to be replaced, they are taped up for whatever reason, I'm not sure. The air filters need to be addressed. So the old owner told me that with these air filters I had some issues getting the air-fuel ratio correct, the same issue that I had when I put the 1J in my Supra. Some cars just don't like an aftermarket intake. Another thing that's the issue right here is the ABS line. So this whole big thing that is connected to down here is the ABS reservoir, essentially. I don't know the correct term for it. I got myself an ABS delete kit that we're going to be using to simplify this as well. Another kit that I'm ordering is there's a big water pump neck assembly. So it's just not the neck with this pipe, the radiator pipe coming out. It has a whole bunch of different attachments to run all the coolant through because it all comes through the top here is where you feed it. So I'm going to get a whole new assembly for that as well to simplify these as well, so I'm not mandated to stick with the lines that are there, but I'll have a little flexibility by running steel lines, which there are also steel AN lines as well, as you can see here, that run for the fuel rail, which is great. That gives us that flexibility to work with those as well. And even considering all that needs to be replaced, the engine, as I mentioned, is still in a really good condition. When I start it up, there is some smoke, but it's all oil burning off from right here because this valve cover was not attached when I first turned the car on or bought the car on and loaded up on the trailer. Didn't really realize that. I probably should have, especially because the guy mentioned it to me and I just forgot. So there's oil burning off on the turbo housing exhaust shields here. One small disappointment with the car is the fact that there is no AC for me to run, so the lines were disconnected. I can't just get another AC condenser and wire that back up or hose that back up because it has a new radiator, an aftermarket radiator, which was put in by a previous owner to try to chase down a leak because the radiator was leaking. So there is no room for the AC radiator to fit in the front anymore, unfortunately. I could possibly get a smaller one to fit, and I might consider doing that, especially since I plan to keep this car for a long time, so we'll kind of see what direction that goes. Another thing that I do want to do, and I'm strongly considering, is to do a battery relocation to the trunk, especially with this engine bay being really packed. Having the extra space of this area, even just right here, will make a huge difference. And then with this all gone as well, that'll save space. Unfortunately, on this side, there really isn't as much space saving that you can do. All of these need to be here and aren't really able to be moved. So let's talk about the biggest issue with the car. It's wiring. So there are a lot of things like this where wires that don't lead anywhere. This is tapped into the radiator. I'm assuming it was meant to be a coolant temperature sensor that just never got wired in. But the nightmare comes when you get inside the car. So this whole dash has been ripped off from the bottom side. Luckily, all the pieces are still in the back here. You can't really see them, unfortunately. But this all needs to be addressed. I am not looking forward to this in the slightest. I hate wiring, but wiring is where you'll learn a lot. But despite this mess, it does have some cool things. For instance, down here, this wire, this goes to a turbo timer that was not finished being connected up, so I'm going to connect that as well to help out myself. Some of these, I'm not sure where they go. They're disconnected down here as well. So that'll all have to be figured out where it goes. On the inside, there are some pluses, mainly being these boost gauges right here. These actually work. The OEM boost gauge on the inside on this far right is actually notorious for being slightly inaccurate, so these ones are correctly wired and do show the correct gauge. They aren't mounted super well at all, but that can be remedied fairly simply. Steering wheel as well. The airbag did not blow on this. It's been cut. So what happened was the previous owner wanted to try and replace this for an aftermarket wheel, and they just started hacking away at it and just never finished the job. It does have a Pioneer head unit. I don't know what the correct term for this is. I think it's a head unit on the inside here. That does work. Obviously, it's not fully connected, and it does have an issue where when you turn the car off, it doesn't shut off, so it drains the battery whenever you turn it off. So that part is a downside. The good side though, the transmission actually works incredibly well. So I did buy a clutch actually to replace, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do it quite yet because I'm holding off on performance parts, largely due to the fact that I don't have the funds for them, because we're looking at like $4,000 just to get an extra 100 horsepower, which is what I'd be looking at. Granted, a lot of that is stuff that can be tuned up more, like with the ECU, turbos, tuning cost, and such like that. But for now, I think the stock clutch is where we're going to be staying at, especially since we won't be going past the 300 horsepower. It comes with active aerodynamics. Unfortunately, I don't know if these actually work. They go towards the wing in the back. You have to get above 50 in order to see them work. And I thought there was a way that you could just hit them to turn them on, but I could not find something that would do that. It still has the original center console climate control here, which looks really cool. I don't really want to replace that because A, it's difficult to find something that'll actually fit and run it well, and B, I do like the nostalgic look of this. The interior wise though, condition is actually really solid condition. So the leather seats are in good condition. They need a good clean, as does the carpet. The panels are in pretty good condition. On both sides, the leather here is starting to get worn out, so I may replace that with black, as I am considering changing the interior color to full black, although the gray is still really nice. This seat has the biggest issue where there is one rip right here, but other than that, it's actually pretty good. A couple of knobs fell off the side here. I don't know if they're in the back or not. The seat is powered up, of course, but the battery is dead. The back seats as well are in good condition. Most of these parts here are for the dash. That will put it all back together. The suspension is stock, wheels are aftermarket, but that is the stock ride height. The wheels are though bigger, so it makes it look like it feels out a little better. Unfortunately, I can't take it on a test drive for you as I wish I could. The downside is that with the ABS not being mounted correctly, as I was showing you, that we're going to replace it or we're going to replace the ABS and just have that deleted. That part is actually sitting on the wheel. So this part does need to be held up in order for the car to drive. Now to the back, it has the classic VR4 and 3000 GT, well 3000 GT in general, taillights that go all the way across. They look really good. It says Mitsubishi on the middle. Now something really cool is that on this car specifically, it says VR4 on the back. Now that's a vinyl cover, and I'm 99% sure that's aftermarket. I don't think that comes stock, but I really like it, so I'm gonna have to get a new one to replace this one because this one is all torn up. Now for the exhaust, it has dual tip, dual exhaust, so two on this side, two on the other. I gotta think you can figure out the math of dual, but it's a straight pipe all the way through. And honestly, it actually sounds really good. It's not overly raspy, it's not even really raspy at all, and it's a lot quieter than I was anticipating, which is something that's really cool because I don't want to be too loud and obnoxious, but I do want a nice good tone to enjoy, especially with a nice JDM classic car. And that's essentially it for the 3000 GT. Nothing overly crazy or complicated that's going to have to be done. There will be some tedious work, but that's just part of owning a car. As for body-wise, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to have to wait and see. That's right, I bought another Supra. This one I got off my friend. It needs a bit of work, nothing too crazy though. So as you can tell, it got a bunch of mismatched panels. It's covered in mud as it was sitting in a field and we had to pull it out. It's on the stock wheels, stock suspension. The exhaust on this one though is a straight pipe, which it honestly doesn't sound that good, so we're gonna have to address that later. Interior wise, it's in solid condition, but nothing super great. The best part is the panels aren't cracked. Nothing on the side here is all worn out or cracked or anything, so that's a good sign. It's a blue, which I'm not a huge fan of, so we may end up dyeing this black. The seats are decently worn, but I kept these old Supra seats from my other car, and those are in great condition. They're gray, so we're definitely going to be swapping those out. It is an automatic, so I will be swapping that out for a manual, most likely. I don't know if I'll do it initially since the engine is already in pretty good condition. It comes with a place to run your own phone or stereo, which is fine. I may keep that, may replace it with the old one and try to adapt it. Center console's in rough condition, but since there aren't any cup holders, we may be adapting this. The back seats are in good condition for as they are. They are blue, which is very blue. It's very interesting. This car is so blue on the inside, it's insane. But everything on the inside overall is in pretty good condition. It comes with a sunroof, which unfortunately leaks, so we're going to be having to address that soon. Since I'm not going to be working on this car immediately, it's going to be undercover for a while. Oregon, why do you have to start raining? Why are you like this? It's raining. But then over there, it's clear and beautiful. An absolute nugget of this car is the fact that not only does it have its front badge, the front badge is in pristine condition, so that's super rare. Luckily, I had that same situation with my old Supra as well, so I'm pretty lucky when it comes to that. The badges have this really cool carbon fiber look to them, where it's red carbon fiber, says Toyota Supra. These things will go for, I've seen them go as much as $500 on eBay. Not sure if anyone bought it for that. I think people are more buying them for around the $100 to $200 mark, but still super glad that I have this. This car is an 87, so it has the pre-89 bumper on it. Still has the original mesh grille. Fog lights work, the signal lights could use some work. I think on the right hand side this one is out, but we'll address that later. Now to the engine. So it is the 7MGE non-turbo version, which at the crank ran 200 horsepower and about 180 foot-pounds of torque. I've never seen any dynoed at more than 165 horsepower to the wheel, so it is a fairly slow car for what it is, especially considering that it's 3,500 pounds. But the engine itself is in pretty good condition, especially considering it's right at the 200,000 mile mark. Valve covers, the spark plug wires, and the spark plugs themselves were replaced, so it's really not leaking any oil. It is smoking a bit, but that's coming from the headers. I'd love to point, but the struts don't work, so I kind of have to hold it up. So he did give me an aftermarket header to replace this with, which is great. So we are going to be doing a full exhaust on this. Unfortunately, when I was pulling the car out, or when they were pulling the car out from the field, we found out that the brakes just did not work, and so we weren't able to see because it was 1 in the morning to get the car out. I did not get home until 2:30 in the morning. It was an adventure to say the least, but we got the Supra. But I found out today when I opened the brake reservoir that there's just no fluid in there, so I'm assuming there's some sort of leak. The lines, if they haven't been replaced in 30 years, then they are probably cracked, so we will be replacing those with steel brake lines anyway, because those steel brake lines feel amazing. But overall, the engine is in spectacular condition, especially considering that it's over 30 years old now. You are seeing wear and tear with some of the plastics here, but that's to be expected with a car of this age. He also gave me an aftermarket cold air intake, which I would love to replace. I'm hoping that it won't mess with the ECU. I know people who run them and haven't had that issue, so I'm hoping that'll be okay. This does not come with a Toyota electromagnetic suspension, so it's not adjustable. It does have a sport mode with it, but I'm not sure if that actually does anything of significance on this car. I think all it does is let the transmission rev to a higher RPM before it's shifting, but I am not sure enough in that area to make a confident guess. Aside from that, the only thing that needs to be fixed on this car is the oil pan. Unfortunately, the oil pan bolt was stripped, so the engine does need to come out to get that refreshed. So we will be doing some other light refreshing on it. I'll probably replace the valve cover gaskets again just so I can paint the valve covers. But for the most part, the issues with the car are all that you see. It is in desperate need of a paint job, which is huge. It's in even more desperate need of a clean, and the most desperate need of a wide body kit, of course. I'm also debating running the mirrors that I did on my old Supra. These are really cool, but the other ones look even cooler. Unfortunately, you really can't see much out of them, which stinks, but you know, it is what it is. The trim around the side is really good. I'm gonna do my best to not mess that up. I'd love to keep this color, so if I do wrap it, I'll pull it off and then put that back on as is, because I think that's a lesson that I learned from last time. That's like, I wish I could have done that differently. Taillights are in solid condition. That one's totally fine. This one is cracked, unfortunately, so I will have to go over that. It does have plastic dip on it, so I can get that off. Antenna's broken, which is kind of to be expected, but I'll do a delete on that most likely. Wheels are stock wheels, and overall it's a car that's in pretty solid condition. Transmission wise, I'm not sure if I'm going to go with the W58 or the R154. I'd love to get the R154, but cost wise, I just don't know if it's going to be worth it, since I'm going to still be running the 7 MGE. And I can get a W55 or W58 off of a Lexus with a 2JZ, which is a lot more common, so just cost efficiency wise, it may not be worth it to go all the way for an R154 at the moment. Although if I do find one, I will buy it, because that will be awesome. And that's essentially what we're looking at with these two cars. Two absolute passion projects of cars that are going to be legendary. We have one of my dream cars that I fell in love with in high school, and finally have the opportunity to own a car that I'll be keeping for a lifetime. And I get to own another Supra, which is a car that I so desperately wanted another shot at to fix and redo all the mistakes that I had made from working on a car the very first time. I am so insanely excited to get started working on these two cars. In fact, we're starting working on the 3000 GT today, so stay tuned for the future as we get rolling along with it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget, dislike, unsubscribe, leave your hate in the comments. Adios.